Stop messing around, stop fooling around, stop delaying, stop procrastinating. Get up, get out, get it done. Everything is possible, nothing is a problem, and anything can be overcome. I just get my ass up out of bed, I get my shit together, and I get out and I start the fight. And that will transform you from a mere mortal into a superhuman being. I've never, ever, ever met anybody who told me that they got rich watching their IRA or their 401k.
All right, happy Wednesday, Peter. How you doing?
I'm happy on
Fantastic.
Wednesday.
All right.
I already know I'm going to like this because I see one of my buddies here.
Yeah,
So
yeah, there you go. You want to just get into it?
Let's get into
All right,
it.
sounds good.
What was the first shit that you eliminated?
Literally just saying no to
Jesse.
requests for my time.
Like what
Anything and everything
You think you
Jesse
need me so much,
says,
I wanna
thinks,
talk to
or
you about a
does,
business
everyone
idea
has
that
to
I
listen
have,
to.
In the beverage space, I know that you had your coconut water.
Yeah.
I want to talk to you about that. No,
No,
I'm going for a run.
he doesn't
I
want
don't
it.
want any
He's
money.
carving
I just
out
wanna talk
time.
to you
He's
for 15 minutes. A friend of
prioritizing.
mine- No. You think on Friday night you can come down?
He
for
knows how to
15
say no, or he
No,
learned how to say
because
no.
it's cumulative.
And that's what
Right.
they're talking
No.
about.
No, it's going to
Yeah,
be
you can't
one
say yes to
person every
everything.
day or so.
You have to
with
have
some new requests.
boundaries
So that
and
was the
limits
first
and
shit,
prioritize.
and I put myself first.
Yeah, he
and a
puts
lot of
himself
times
first,
I
his
don't,
family first.
But in certain times I do.
So I love Jesse. Everyone loves Jesse. Jesse and I are buddies from college. We live down the hall from each other in the dorms. He's a crazy dude. I mean, everything that you imagine about Jesse, it's all true. Like, he's just nuts. He's a limit-pushing, boundary-breaking, like, he's the most unique individual you'll ever meet. And I love that you put up this piece with Jesse and Joe Rogan today. He's talking about setting limits and setting boundaries for yourself. People come at you all the time in business and life. Can you have a meeting? Can you mentor me? Can you coach me? Can I sell you? Can I buy from you? Can we do business together? Whatever it is. And the urge when you are on the come up and when you want to be successful is to say yes to all of these things. You have to learn how and when to say no. George, we've talked about this before. Yeah. Learning how and when to say no is paramount. There's only 24 hours in a day. You have to make 48 hours out of the 24 hours. So now you have even less time. You have family. You have to sleep. You have to travel. Whatever it is you got to do, you have to know how and when to say no. And it's an important skill. Anybody who's successful knows how to say no quite easily, and they have their own boundaries. Look, you can't do everything, and you can't be everything to everybody. You have to find your lane with the people that are in your life, know when to go for opportunities, and know when to just shut it down, man. Like, you got to do your meditation, you got to do your reading, you got to do your studying, your practice, your repetition, your, like, whatever your discipline is, right? Focus on that stuff. Eventually, you got to say no. Like, the beginning, maybe you say yes more than you want to or need to. But eventually, you have to learn how to say no, because time, the one commodity that you can't get more of and you can't control it. So you have to know when to shut things off so that you can spend the time on the things that are going to impact your life the most, impact your business the most, impact your success the most. You got to be with your family. You got to have your health. You got to be with your friends. You have to feed your soul, your heart, your mind, all that stuff. Jesse knows how to do that. Follow Jesse.
Was that a big challenge for you? Because starting out, a lot of times, yeah, you have to say
I used to say yes to everything.
Yeah, exactly.
I was a whore.
Yeah, and that's what you're supposed to do.
I used to say yes to everything. I don't say yes to everything now at all. And in fact, someone asked me this morning two people asked me this morning if I wanted to do podcasts. Sorry, I can't. I mean, I'm flattered. I would love to do it. We just don't have the time. I don't have enough time to do the podcast with you, George.
Yeah, no, I know.
Let alone third-party podcasts.
Yeah, only so many hours in the day.
Yeah, I had another person ask me this morning if I wanted to invest in Ohio and Florida. I can't. I can't. I got all my own deals, my own opportunities. My desk is so full with the stuff that I have to fund and manage and close on and get to work on. It's really tough. So learning how and when to say no for me enabled me to really drill down and be successful, even more successful on the stuff that I already do. I don't run ultra marathons like Jesse does. I don't climb Mount Everest like Jesse does. And I don't do a lot of things like Jesse does. Not many people do. I mean, he's a freak. But follow my buddy Jesse, and you'll learn a lot from him.
All right, so this next reaction is a tweet from Zain Khan.
Okay.
And he says, hard work is overrated, consistency is underrated. It's not about how hard you swing the bat, it's about swinging over and over again until you learn to hit it out of the park. Consistency gets you places, hard work doesn't. What do you think?
Consistency is required. He's right about that. Hard work is not overrated, in my opinion. You need to have hard work, and you need to have smart work. Work hard and smart, both at once. So George, when he says consistency is underrated, I think perhaps today with younger people, the younger generation, they haven't had a chance to deploy repetition and consistency. If you haven't yet found the time to be repetitious and consistent with your skill and your discipline, you got to find it. So when he says consistency is underrated, look, I don't underrate consistency. We talk about it all the time. So you know how much I value consistency and repetition. That's what gets you to climb the ladder. That's what advances the needle. You don't become good at anything unless you're consistent with it. You don't increase your odds of success with anything unless you're consistently swinging the bat. And so consistency is a completely important part of the recipe. Everything today is low barrier to entry. It's so easy to get in business. It's so easy to buy real estate. It's so easy to invest in things with all the new platforms and access that people have now. It's so easy to do so many things today compared to what it was 3 or 5 or 10 years ago. Become an expert in as many things that you can. The way you do that is through repetition and consistency, not low barrier to entry opportunities. The best opportunities are the hardest. The most fruitful opportunities are the ones that have the highest barrier to entry. Nothing's easy. If it were, everyone would do it. George, right now, everybody's doing everything because so many things are easier. Become an expert, have a point of difference, stand out, and the way you do that is through repetition and consistency. Practice, develop a skill, become a master at your craft, and do it over and over and over again with several different crafts. Because once you have 5 or 10 skill sets that you're the best in, that you're an expert in, you're dangerous. No one's going to want to get rid of you. Everyone's going to want to do business with you. You can start your own businesses. You can consult. You can provide value. You can solve problems. All of that stuff, you're creating your own job security. You're creating your own self-worth. Expertise is paramount. You gain expertise by repetition and consistency. I'm getting sick of saying it. Someone hit me in the face with a baseball bat and put me down. I don't want to say it anymore. Listen, you got to become an expert in a lot of things, and the only way you do that is to develop those skills with practice, and practice. Consistency is the key with anything. Once you develop consistency, those things, those actions become habits. Habits are the foundation of long-term success. Without the consistency, you're only doing things once or twice. That's not a habit. That's not going to fuel your long-term success. Consistency is everything. I like what this guy tweeted. He seems to get that part. I'm not sure about the hard work is overrated part. Maybe he wants to have the consistency without working so hard. But listen, what's his name? Zain? Listen, Zain, you got to work hard at everything. There's no free pass. There's no easy ride. There's no less way to work or fewer hours to work. You got to work hard. You got to work both hard and smart. Consistency is a part of that. Have I said enough?
I think that's great. No, that's fantastic. Hell yeah.
My gosh, how much more do I have to talk about it?
So great. All right, well, head over to the table.
Thanks, George.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Zain.
Welcome back to the table, Peter.
Thanks, George.
Happy, it's 420 today.
Yeah. Oh,
So,
George,
yeah,
we got to talk about that. But hang on, let me get some.
Oh yeah, you get the new look. Yeah.
Yeah. Look at this, everybody. There's George in his green cardigan that his mom gave him. Very sweet.
Yes, indeed.
And look at his face.
All clean. Well, not all clean, but clean enough.
Look at his shirt and buttoned up to the top button.
Yeah.
I mean, only my man George can pull this stuff off. 145 pounds soaking wet.
Yes, indeed.
Eats the same thing for breakfast every day.
Yep.
Runs, does planks for 15 minutes. I mean, my guy George.
I have to thank you. The Seder went fantastic. So much fun.
Tell us all about your Seder.
Oh man. So yeah, it was about like 14 of us, I guess.
Yeah.
And instead of they say you're supposed to recline, and most people I think they like have a pillow that's like ritualistic of reclining. But I was like, let's just take it a little more seriously. So I put out the tablecloth on the floor in our living room, and so everyone BYOP they brought their own pillow, and so we laid out in front of there.
I think there's something a little anti-Jewish about putting the tablecloth on the floor and bringing your own pillows, but please
That's
continue.
Fine. That is totally fine.
I love your modern take on it.
We did. I called it the Erev Rav Seder, because the mixed multitude Seder, because it was like most of us weren't Jewish, and I wanted to be respectful of the fact that and acknowledge that fact.
Incredible.
So fun.
Did you fill a glass for Elijah?
We did. Yeah, we filled the glass for Elijah, and we had a whole prayer with Miriam. And
incredible.
Yeah, super fun. We had
what did you eat?
Lots of wine. So this is something interesting. Yeah, so matzo ball soup was fucking awesome.
Great. Sinkers or floaters?
Everyone loved that. Floaters. Yeah, I'm a fluff guy. Are you into the denser matzo balls?
Sinkers,
yeah, okay.
man.
All right, that's fine. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was very popular. And then I did lamb, which I know this is part of the Erev Rav component of this, because technically I found out later, since 1543, a lot of Jews don't do lamb and don't do roasted meat because it's reminiscent of the sacrificial system.
Yeah.
But biblically, like in the Torah, they do roast the lamb. So anyway, we did that, and that was great. And so next time we'll maybe do a braise and do it a little more, kosher, as they say.
Just incredible.
Yeah. But
I have no words for the Seder that you've just described to me that you had. I think we have to have our own separate Instagram channel just for you and your Seder footage.
We can do that.
Wild.
Yeah.
Wow.
So anyway, thank you for your input. And it was very helpful.
What Haggadah did you use?
The Velveteen Rabbi. I
think you said that.
It was Rachel.
Rabbi.
Yeah, Rachel Barenblatt.
Wow.
And yeah, it was awesome.
Extraordinary.
So great. Yeah. So maybe
good for you.
Maybe sometime we can do it together.
So what's happening out there today?
So,
I mean, a lot's happening this week.
A lot is happening. One thing you've said before about how, for all the problems that the U.S. has, you wouldn't want to live anywhere else. So I was bringing up Canada. That you've heard Canada's
been an interesting topic of conversation this year. I mean, this guy Trudeau is a very polarizing figure up there.
No, 100%.
Well, I'm sorry, I digress.
No, you're fine. I mean, that is part of it. So basically, Canada banned foreigners from buying homes, or at least they're trying to. They're trying to pass this law.
I heard that. You want to know who else is doing that?
Yeah, sure.
Local towns, municipalities, and HOAs, homeowners associations,
Wall Street Journal just had a
are
thing on
preventing investors from buying homes.
Yeah, I heard that.
I think it's the same goal and objective as what you're talking about in Canada.
Yeah. So I know we've talked a lot about before of regulation being a problem in terms of supply and demand issues. Where do you feel like this plays out in that spectrum? Like, do you see this ban as anything other than a political maneuver, or what do you think about this?
So this is more of governments legislating free market behaviors. Yeah. So the market is saying, we've got capital, we want to buy homes, we're from Europe, we're from the United States, wherever, we're not Canadian nationals, we want to buy homes in Canada.
Yeah.
And Canada's saying, no, you can't. It's more regulation. Mm-hmm. I don't know that it works. There's lots of housing regulation and housing policy already in Canada in different forms and areas. Toronto's got very egregious rent control.
Yeah.
And it's very, very expensive to live there. Yet another example where there's these very restrictive rules and regulations, yet prices still seem to be very, very high. So what good has it done? None is the answer. Yeah. So, if you restrict buyers from coming in, you're going to at least stabilize prices. And if there isn't enough domestic nationals to absorb the supply, then prices are going to retreat a little bit, but maybe at a faster pace. I mean, if you had additional buyers in the marketplace, it would stabilize prices even further and prices might increase even more. We're in a rising rate environment right now. So as the cost to borrow money goes up, a lot of buyers fall out anyway. The marginal buyers that weren't all cash, that need mortgages and are very monthly payment sensitive, they're going to fall off to the wayside right now in this rising rate environment. So you've already got a lot of demand factors chilling at the moment. Mm-hmm. If you introduce regulation into it as well and prevent foreign nationals from buying property in Canada, I mean, I don't know why you do it.
Yeah, what's that old saying? The cure for high prices is high prices. And I feel like maybe what you're saying.
Wait,
here,
what is that, George?
The cure for high prices is more high prices.
Where do you hear this stuff? It's great.
I don't know. That was from an article that I read recently.
Okay.
But I think what you're saying here is that this might prolong that extent of
stop fucking with the natural supply and demand dynamics in a marketplace. Just stop. Let it play out. It's the most efficient, it's the most consumer beneficial. Right now prices are high, which arguably is less consumer beneficial, but everything goes in cycles, everything has waves, and everything has inputs that drive it. So right now rates are going up, We're in post-pandemic economic environment. That's got its own factors, right? There's a housing shortage, at least in the United States there is, and I think maybe in Canada there is too, although I'm not as informed as to the particular market metrics of Canada at the moment.
Neither am I.
You got to let the free markets play out. If you want prices to stabilize or retreat, build more. Build more supply. Don't screw with the demand. Don't regulate the supply. Don't restrict the supply. Don't think you can tinker with the various screws and nuts and bolts of a free marketplace and solve it. No one ever has. I don't know why they think they're going to be able to now do it and be the first ever in history to do it in Canada. You can't. Stop screwing with it and simply let free market dynamics play out. You could build more supply. That you can do. I welcome it. I challenge everybody out there, Canada, United States, your town, my town, find ways to build more supply. I can't even take it anymore. Build more supply. In California, everyone's coming out of the woodwork now saying, holy shit, we have to build. There's a new trend now. We've talked about it. It's called YIMBY, Y-I-M-B-Y, which is counterpoint to NIMBY, not in my backyard. Now they're saying yes in my backyard. They're saying screw the regulations, screw the restrictions. We've done it for the past 70, 80 years. We need to build more. Please build more. That's what everyone's saying in California. They finally realized they were wrong. I wish they would realize the same thing in New York and New Jersey and these other places that are introducing more restrictive regulations and housing policies that just de-incentivize development and demotivate builders and entrepreneurs from borrowing and building and taking risk and putting capital to work. I mean, you need these developers and builders. There's like this really crazy ass-backwards view on developers and entrepreneurs. Oh, they're greedy, they're big, bad property developers, like all that stuff that like it's just... It's all bullshit. You need these people. We need people to take risk. We need people to build. We need people to sign on a mortgage note and a construction loan and borrow and put the capital to work and build housing supply. We need it. You need it in Canada. We need it here in the United States. We need it here in New Jersey. They need it in California. California's finally waking up to this. Thank God California's just waking up to it now. I read a big article recently about how everyone's coming out of the woodwork in California saying, please build. Yes, in my backyard. You want to put up manufactured homes, affordable housing, low-income housing, student housing, luxury housing. Yes to all of it. Because there's an ass for every seat. George, the marketplace needs a product for every type of consumer. Build all of it. You need a lot of that kind of stuff. You need a lot of everything. Let them build. Canada, let them build. Stop restricting. You need the foreign investment. You need the domestic investment. You need people to buy, and that's going to stabilize prices, but you also need new supply. So focus your legislative efforts on building more and incentivizing developers and contractors and builders and entrepreneurs to spend money in your country and in your various towns and let them build, man. I mean, it's simple math. It's 101. There's no other way to slice it and dice it and dissect it. You have these governments and these government leaders and political leaders sitting around these tables going, oh, well, I think we should, restrict and put in rules and regulations that create, and that's really going to solve our... It doesn't solve anything. Let them build. You want to have a topic to sit around and talk about it and debate on when you're at your table with your governing boards and your leadership boards and your city councils? Figure out how to let them build. Holy shit, how many more times do I have to keep saying it? Build more supply. We have a supply shortage. The answer is to build more supply, not to go buy grapefruits. We have a supply shortage. The answer is to build more supply, not to go on an airplane ride somewhere. We have a supply shortage. The answer is to build more supply, not to lay in bed and play video games. You have to build more supply. That's the answer to when you have a supply shortage. Not regulating, not restricting. Holy shit.
I want to touch on the HOAs because you had brought that up. That in that situation, I don't see what the free market response will be to provide supply for homeowners. And I'm not saying you're wrong. I just don't see it.
Well, you're saying an HOA is already built. It's already created. Therefore, what more can they do? They can't build anymore? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I'm saying is like these groups are trying to prevent institutional capital from creating rental space for neighborhoods, right? That's essentially what's happening.
Well, look, the HOAs are private communities. So if you and I live together in a gated community or in a homeowner situation somewhere or in a condo building, There's a board, there's a governing board, just like a town would, or a state or a country would.
Yeah.
And the HOA is going to come up with rules and regulations for the community. If the community doesn't want rentals, and a lot of them don't, they'll institute regulations saying you can buy your house as a primary resident or as a secondary residence, but you can't rent it to anybody. I mean, I've seen that in HOAs, and that sort of comes with the territory in HOAs. I don't know that the HOAs are as guilty of coming up with legislation for their own private communities as are the states and the federal governments that are enacting housing policy and rent controls and rental policies and all of these things that we've been talking about. You've got a group in these HOAs, they're private property owners. It's not the general public. I think we have to recognize that there's a difference, right? In Canada, saying that nationwide, no foreign investors are allowed to buy homes, I think is a little different than a community of whatever, 100 or 200 or 50 or 20 private property owners that are able to self-govern and impart restrictions on renting out a home within the HOA or how the front lawn on your home in the HOA should look. I mean, they all have rules and regulations. I am the owner of several HOAs and run and control several HOAs in my portfolio. And we have rental policies, we have pet policies, we have exterior balcony policies. Like, we institute rules and regulations that dictate what people can and can't do within the HOA. We want people to be able to buy and sell, but we want it to look right. We want people to have a consistency of look on the exterior so that when you drive by, you don't see 50 different colors of window blinds or whatever the case may be. And we are in control of the exterior landscaping. We don't let anybody else do that. We implement guidelines for landscaping. And so there's a right way and a wrong way to impart rules and regulations in your communities. And if you're running a state or a city or a country, there's right and wrong ways to impart rules and regulations to get a response from a free market. Just don't screw with a free market.
Right.
If you have a supply shortage, the answer is to build more supply. The answer is not to go skateboarding or whatever.
Totally.
They're completely mutually exclusive concepts and have no connection. If you have a supply shortage, build more supply. You don't have a demand problem, so why are you fucking with demand?
I think that's what I'm curious about with the institutional investor situation, is that a lot of these big capital, BlackRock style organizations are building to rent. And while they're
building to rent, they're buying to rent.
Yeah, exactly. And so while there certainly is a demand for that, that's not providing supply for people that want to own homes. And so I'm curious what the free market
that's not
is.
Providing supply. That's them buying existing supply. The answer is build more. Build more. Figure out zoning for your areas that have available land and let builders come in and build. Figure out tax incentives. Figure out pilot programs. Figure out how to motivate entrepreneurs, builders, and developers to come in and take risks, to sign personally for construction money, where if there's a problem, they'll lose their personal house and lose their personal assets. You want them to take risk. I don't see anybody else showing up to take risk. Politicians don't take risk. They just sit around a table and say, we're going to regulate you because we can't figure out how to build more supply. I'm telling you guys, politicians, government, civic leaders out there, find the areas of your town, municipality, or state that have the greatest amount of available land, that are the most underutilized, and figure out how to zone them properly. Figure out the economics of your town or state's budget and figure out where you have opportunities to incentivize developers to come in so that your rateable base goes up. I mean, guys, you got to look at all this. You're running a business. Don't just show up to your town council, city council meetings and sit around in a vacuum and be like, oh, Bob, what do you want to do? I don't know. Amy, what do you want to do? I don't know. It's ridiculous. And it sucks because, I applaud people who are leaders of towns and states and who run for public office. It's a shitty job. I wouldn't want to do it. So you have my respect. But for God's sakes, once you get there, deploy some business sensibilities, some business practices. You're running a business. You're running the business of my town. You're running the business of my state. All of that means you have to be aware of economic opportunities, of drivers, of financial incentives, and how to generate activity. You guys don't know how to do that in most places, so you default to regulate, and it's completely ass backwards. You have to motivate the economic engine that will create more supply. If you have a supply shortage, build more goddamn supply. It's that easy.
Yeah. So it's 420.
It's for speaking. All right, listen.
Yeah.
So I know where you're going with this. Today's April 20th, 420. Tomorrow, April 21st.
Yeah.
George, what happens tomorrow in the state of New Jersey on April 21st?
Cannabis sales become legal. Yeah.
All right. So I just heard angels singing and the lights shining.
So my question is, why the 21st? You were one day away.
You know, speaking of politicians, right? Because they couldn't have just made it 420 the day. Somebody in the legislative branch of New Jersey said, Governor, we can't make 420 the day that recreational cannabis sales goes legal. Like, we have to pick another day, and so let's just do 421. Yeah. The dumbest freaking thing ever.
It is amazing.
Because if they made it April 20th, it would be like conceding. It would be like they don't want to.
It's a middle ground.
Oh my God! It's so dumb. They could have made it 420. Yeah. It's the dumbest thing. How great would it have been had they made the day that legal cannabis sales occurred, April 20th.
It's just so funny that they were so close. I think that's the thing that's amazing.
And it's obviously so intentional that they made it April 21st.
Of course.
Because they were like, all right, we're going to give it to them, but we're not going to give them everything because it'll be too much of a win. Yeah. Like, all the potheads are going to run around waving flags and cheering on 420. They couldn't have that. Yeah. Governor Murphy, that was definitely your office. Either you or someone in your office decided to make it 421 versus 420 on purpose, intentionally. I applaud you for making it legal, but God damn, did you have to? Did the 24 hours really kill you? Yeah. You couldn't have let the people in your state just celebrate that it was 420. So, it would have been incredible.
No, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you, because you've been following the cannabis industry for a long time. You've been investing in it
intimately.
Yeah. What excites you intimately? What excites you about this? What do you see the future as?
Well, I have a tenant that currently does about $35,000 a day in cash sales just from medical cannabis products.
Man. Yeah.
Now, after 421, when recreational adult sales goes legal, they're projecting they're going to quadruple that up to $125,000 a day. I said $125,000 a day. So in this particular case, with medical sales, I get one rent, and with recreational sales, I get a significant increase in rent. So I'm excited for that, but I'm also excited for my tenant because, again, I'll repeat it, $125,000 a day, that's like a $30 to $40 million business a year, annually. Yeah. It's incredible. It's going to be a lot of revenue for the town. It's going to be a lot of revenue for the state. And people, these municipalities, people everywhere need revenue. There's been no new revenue sources coming online. I think online betting and cannabis are going to be the new needle movers for these states and municipalities for increasing their revenue. But that's a side note. Yeah, but there's going to be a lot of money available now that wasn't available before. We're going to be able to see towns and municipalities in our states deploy this money into perhaps lowering taxes, I hope. Perhaps fixing roads and improving schools and making investments in the future, infrastructure, technology, things that they just don't have the money in the budget for. And in our state here in New Jersey, things are so completely ass backwards and out of whack that a huge influx of money is going to be able to solve a lot of problems. Look, I think it's great. They're doing it because of the money. Yeah. Listen, let's be clear about that. They're not doing anybody a favor. They're doing it because they recognize the revenue that they're going to generate. Yeah, totally. Which is great. So that's them making a business decision. Thank you for making a business decision, Governor Murphy. But, you know, it's really going to be good. These businesses are going to do well. People are going to have access to this stuff. And it's going to be regulated, and they're going to be able to generate revenue. I mean, I'm all for it. Yeah. George, you know me. I'm a free market guy. Yeah. The market's demanding legal cannabis sales. The market wants it. There's a lot of money out there, and they're providing the supply. They're enabling it to happen. Do the same thing with housing, for God's sake. George, we were just talking about it.
Totally.
So you're making cannabis sales legal now recreationally because there's a lot of demand. How about making more supply of housing? It's the same thing. It's the same thing. What the... I don't know why these dumb towns, they just...
People need to connect the dots for
It's killing me. Man, it's killing me.
Yeah, maybe one day soon, the dots will be connected.
They all think they're solving problems with the regulations and the price controls and the legislative action that restrict the set-asides and the building and the rules. And I mean, it's eyes are rolling in the back of my head. I'm about to throw up all over the microphone. None of that shit works. Build more supply.
Build more supply.
How much more do I have to say?
We'll make T-shirts of that. Yeah. You've had your ear to the ground for crypto for a long time.
Yeah.
You were actually one of the first that I know was following that closely. Do you hear about in Miami, they did this mortgage thing? Have you heard about this?
Well, I applaud Miami.
Yeah.
Miami's the hub for the Bitcoin conference. Miami is developing their own cryptocurrency. You've got a mayor of Miami who's very pro-crypto. I know a lot about what's happening with crypto in Miami. And now there's DeFi technology that's coming to Miami where they're enabling DeFi mortgage products.
Like a lot of people are saying that crypto is so volatile that this is a dangerous step. Do you feel like that's true, or do you feel like this is just a necessary component of the evolution?
So when we say
yeah.
crypto's volatile, let's just break that down a little
sure.
bit.
Yeah.
Cryptocurrencies that you can trade that have a value on an exchange like Coinbase or Binance, for example, they fluctuate in value daily based on whatever the market conditions are for supply and demand, right? Here we go with supply and demand again. And they're a different product than the definance technologies. It's going to be very good for consumers as these technologies proliferate and develop and get mature. And I applaud Miami for inviting this stuff and enabling this stuff to happen in their city, because it's coming and it's going to come fast. And watch, mark my words, branch banking as we know it is going to be completely different and largely gone in 10 years. And the mortgage origination business and mortgage lending business is going to be completely transformed. Why? Because crypto technologies and DeFi platforms are going to enable the homeowner and the home buyer to get mortgages at far cheaper prices, far quicker, with far less stuff in the way blocking the path.
Yeah.
You know, to get a mortgage, a lot of times it takes 90, 120, 180 days, depending on the situation, depending on the appraisal process, depending on if the appraisal comes in and they get it right. I mean, there's all sorts of solutions that the DeFi and crypto technologies are now going to be able to solve for, and those solutions are going to be faster and cheaper for the consumer. George, anything that's faster and cheaper for the consumer, I'm all for.
Yeah.
That's what free markets are about. So let it all play out and happen, and I'm glad that Miami's letting it happen.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a leader in this space. It's not New York or New Jersey that's letting that happen.
Now, keeping in the Miami vein, you've mentioned before of the threat of Miami being underwater. And I was reading this article.
At some point.
At
Look,
some point,
I don't
yeah,
think it's
exactly.
happening
Well,
tomorrow, but I think if my plan is to own a lot of property and leave it to my kids or grandkids, I think in 50 or 100 years or something, I think there's within that time frame, there's going to be a problem.
You're going to have to figure out things. Yeah, I was reading this thing by, I think it was Jonathan Levin. It was like an op-ed in Bloomberg Tax about the threat of rising sea levels in Florida. But that made me think
Someone writes that article like twice a year.
No, totally. Yeah. So, but it made me think of, you're in coastal New Jersey, which isn't far away from the ocean. I was wondering, like, do you have steps that you take to account for rising sea levels or just extreme weather in general? Like, what does that feel for you?
So you've always heard me say that the things that keep me up at night, they're not many. It's a couple of things.
Yeah.
One is an unprecedented act of terrorism.
Yeah.
And the other is an unprecedented act of Mother Nature.
Yeah.
So the Mother Nature stuff has to be huge, massive, and unprecedented for me. Here's why. I've got flood insurance. My coastal properties are covered for flood insurance.
Yeah.
They're not built on stilts. They're on slabs or foundations with basements. So when you have that type of construction, you're prone to whatever the flood situation is in that particular block in that area, if you're in a flood zone. So I have flood coverage for all my properties. I have a full maintenance and construction team available to me. I mean, we own a construction company. We own a property management business. We've got a lot of the tools and equipment that are needed to deal with basement level and first floor level flooding if and when it occurs. I mean, we had that with Hurricane Sandy in some properties where water got into basements and it took out electrical panels and boilers and hot water heaters. We had some buildings that don't have basements but sit on a slab, and so the first floor, ground floor garden apartments with like sliding patio doors that walk out to a garden area, those first floor apartments got some water inside of them. But we were able to deal with it quickly and effectively. Now, it's different when an unprecedented act like Hurricane Sandy, but times 50 would happen, right? If you have a Hurricane Sandy times 50, we're talking about levels of water coming in so high and so fast that it's not just the basement and first floor. It could be the whole building, because our buildings are like 3 or 4 stories.
Yeah.
It could be the whole building that gets taken out.
Yeah.
It could get washed away. If it gets washed away, you have to rebuild. That's an issue. Other than being well insured and having construction and maintenance resources and equipment available to you to deal with flooding and water events, you're pretty much at the mercy of Mother Nature.
Right. Yeah.
And so what more can you do? You can hope and pray for the best. I mean, George, if a regular storm event happens, our properties are really solid.
Yeah.
If an unprecedented, never before seen, times 100, times 1,000 happens, I mean, the event that I'm imagining and trying to describe to you would take out significantly the entire eastern seaboard. It wouldn't just happen in New Jersey.
Yeah.
And it would be a horrible, horrible thing. And so, George, I have homes in New Jersey. I have a home in Pennsylvania. I have a home in New York. You know, all of those would be probably gone. People would suffer. Businesses would be gone. Gas pumps you couldn't get to. I mean, everything would be underwater, the type of event that I'm describing to you. So if something were to happen at that magnitude, there's really no defending against it. It's like an asteroid hitting you. I mean, you can't defend against it. But for the regular sort of annual cycle of storms and hurricane events and weather that we get here in our area between like August and October, you know, it's typically okay. Just insure properly and be able to access human resources and equipment resources to make repairs and fix your wet basements and apartments.
Yeah. It's funny. That makes me think of like risk. Somebody defined risk as like the thing that's left over after you've thought of everything else.
Right. I love that.
Yeah. Like you,
George, you have the zingers, man.
Well, like I said, it's easier when
the cure for high prices is high prices.
Yeah. It's easier to do that when, you know, I'm not the one doing most of the talking.
You got zingers, dude.
Yeah.
You got to give me some of these zingers beforehand so that I can maybe
I'll feed them to you.
Get one or two of them
100%. No,
you're taking all of them.
That'll be good. I'll do that. I'll do that next time. It's funny, though. Actually, this kind of plays into what I was going to bring up next, is this podcast in general has given me things to talk about, you know, when I'm out and about in society, like people are talking about real estate. I'm like, I'm by no means an expert, but I can touch on certain things. One of the things that comes up every once in a while is 1031. That when people are buying or selling or talking about cap gains or whatever, I was like, we can talk a little bit of 1031. So I wanted to ask you, this is something we talked about back when the election was happening, but the budget came out for White House. It's 2023 budget. And the 1031 is, you know, in danger, so to speak, based on that. What do you think about it? What are your thoughts?
Here's my prediction about the current administration's proposal and inclusion of the 1031 exchange in their budget. It's always in there. The Democrats always put that in their budgets as something that's on the chopping block. Historically, it's never been touched. It's never been eliminated, removed, or adjusted. And it gets horse traded for something else. So I think, and I hope and I pray, that that's what's happening again here. In today's crazy world, I have to just say that the asterisk is you never know, because people are fucking bananas. And if they touch the 1031 exchange, it's going to screw up so much you have no idea. So,
what are the negative things that would happen, do you think?
I mean, there's industries upon industries upon industries that are connected to and a result of the 1031 exchange. I mean, title companies, lending, real estate markets. I mean, all of that stuff.
A lot of jobs.
It gets cut in half. So here's why it's a stupid move, and it doesn't negatively impact anybody anyway by keeping the 1031 present in our tax code and untouched. So if I buy an asset today and I hold it for 10 years and then I sell it, I pay taxes. If I buy an asset today and I hold it forever, I never pay any capital gains taxes because I haven't realized a capital gain. All I've done is hold my asset. There's no event that's taxable in holding an asset. Now, if I have an asset for 10 years and I sell it and do a 1031 exchange and never touch the money and go into another piece of property or asset, there similarly is no taxable event there. I've not touched the money. I've not received the money. The money didn't go into my bank account. I didn't take any money out from the sale of the deal. And if I did take any money out from the sale of the deal, whatever I took out gets taxed at the capital gains rates. So with the 1031 code in place right now as it is and left untouched, it still generates whatever taxable revenue there is for the government for whoever sells and touches the money. But if you sell and you don't touch the money, it's the same thing as having never sold at all, where no one gets any tax revenue and the owner of that asset just continues to own assets. There's no taxable event. So it doesn't make any sense that they would alter or change or remove the 1031 exchange from the current tax code. All it's going to do is hurt us. You know, they do this to have it be a slap in the face to to people that own assets in real estate because there's these allegations that they don't pay any taxes. Let me tell you, people that own businesses in real estate pay a lot of taxes. They just don't pay capital gains on a 1031, and they shouldn't because they've never touched the money. Yeah. When you sell and you get the money and you have your win and you ring the bell and you run around the block screaming and yelling, waving your flag of victory, then you pay cap gains taxes. Yeah. But if you sell something and never get the money and just redeploy it into another asset, you're actually fueling the economy, you're fueling business, you're keeping markets alive, you're participating in something that's very healthy and beneficial for consumers and residents and the general public everywhere. They're not going to touch it. That's my prediction. They always say that they're going to mess with it in Democratic budget proposals, and they never touch it. Thank God. That's the right way to approach it. It's smart. Don't touch it. You are going to do nothing but kill us. I mean, machete across the neck and the jugular if you do anything with that 1031 exchange.
Yeah, fingers crossed. So I want to talk about deal breakers. When you're assessing an apartment building for potential purchase, what's a repair or flaws in the building that are overly expensive or don't add enough value to carry a rent premium to make it worth purchasing?
Oh, well, you have to take the flaws in context of the price and value.
Okay.
No flaw by itself is ever too much of a problem for me. I mean, I was going to say to you something with environmental contamination I would walk away from, but that's not even true because I've bought properties with environmental contamination. Now, the price adjusted, but I went forward with it. So you have to take the flaws and the roadblocks together with the price and value. Now, if my seller says to me, yeah, there's environmental contamination, the price isn't changing, I'm likely going to walk. But if my seller says to me, there's environmental contamination, Peter, go get a proposal from 3 different environmental firms, and we'll take the average of what it's going to cost you as the new guy to deal with this environmental contamination, and I'll give you a break off the purchase price for that amount or something close to it, right? Then that's a discussion. So environmental by itself, not such a scary thing, but I have to take it in consideration with the price that I'm going to pay to accept that risk. Risk and reward. So my reward for paying the price to remediate an environmental problem better be that I get a discount off my purchase price so that at the end of the day, I'm at the same place I was before the environmental flaw was revealed to me. George, same thing with structural issues. Structural issues are usually things that I don't want to have to deal with. My seller should have dealt with them. They didn't. So if I'm going to have to deal with it, I better get a discount for it. Environmental, structural, those are the 2 big ones. Any sort of new regulatory change. So I was under contract on a portfolio in December of 2019, and I had to close on that portfolio in March of 2020, so 3 months later. In that 3-month window, there was massive local legislative change that came down the road, which severely impacted these assets, and I thought the value of the assets. So I had to make a decision on whether or not to move forward, whether to ask for a discount. You know, those are the big things, the 30,000 feet above sea level issues, legislative, structural, environmental. Anything else I can deal with. If it's a roof, I can put on a new roof. I'm probably going to do that anyway. You've heard me say that. Now, if it's a roof and 100 water heaters and 100 HVAC units and 100 units worth of windows, that can be like $1 million. So there's a conversation. But a roof by itself, not a big deal. I'll move forward. Maybe I'll get a couple of bucks from my seller. Maybe I won't. Probably not in this environment. If it's 100 HVAC units, we have to have a conversation. But if it's 3 HVAC units, I'm going to be expected to move forward. So it all depends on what the impediment is versus the value. If value changes with the impediment, I'm okay and I can transact. If value doesn't change with the impediment, then I've got a business decision to make. Do I want to take on the extra cost and risk and time and effort to deal with the impaired issue? I implore everybody out there who's looking at real estate or other types of investments, and you find things along the way during due diligence or right before you close or transact, and you think that it's going to really affect the value of your business or asset, I think you got to bring it up with your seller and have your ducks in a row and have third-party reports if you need those and make a presentation. But if it's a leaky roof and you know you're going to replace the roof anyway, stop being cute and go ahead and close.
I think that's your zinger for the day.
I have a zinger.
That's the zinger.
I mean, what I'm saying is, if you've got 100 things, that's something. But if you got a couple of things, What are you going to do? Delay the closing?
Right.
Fight? Pay a lawyer?
Yep.
$5,000 to delay things, and then you drag it out. I mean, you could have closed and gotten to business by then, you know?
100%. Cool. Well, this is great conversation. Do you have anything that you want to touch on before we head
I love
to
when you
Q&A?
tell me that talking to me is a great conversation.
It is.
I mean, it's so good for my self-confidence and my ego.
Well, that's what this is really for, right? It's an ego boost
Right,
for the week.
right. You've got a real estate guy on social media not selling anything, just in front of a camera for his own joy and antics.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just an ego trip. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
People ask me all the time, Peter, why are you on social media? And I'm like, I don't really know. They're like, Peter, what are you selling? Nothing.
Yeah.
You're not selling like coaching or a course, or you're not selling. I'm like, no, I'm not selling anything. Well, why are you on social media? I'm like, here's the answer why I'm on social media. Because I'm deathly afraid of becoming irrelevant. And I feel like the world is about online presence and social media is that.
Yeah.
So I want to participate. I don't want to be left behind. I don't want to be like an aging dinosaur that's not like, I don't want to be the older guy. Like I'm 54. I don't want to be the older guy that's like, I don't get social media. These young kids today, why did that? Like, I don't want to do that. So I want to be in the mix.
Yeah.
So I don't care that I'm not selling anything.
And not selling anything explicitly has allowed you to talk about whatever you want. You know, I think when you end up selling something, it drives a little bit more of the conversation.
Look, people. Here's what I believe about social media. For me, people can get to know me. They can get to know how I think. Perhaps if they want to do business with me, they can reach out and they can go to the website and fill out the accredited investor form or whatever, and we can maybe have a business relationship if they're an accredited investor. There's been a little bit of that.
I was going to say that has happened.
There's been a little bit of that. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But it's a bit of a calling card. It's a bit of a business card. You know, when I was a kid, my brothers and my parents used to have business cards. And when I first got into business, I used to have a business card. Now I just say, go to my social media platforms and check me out.
Yeah.
If you want to call me, call me. You know, if you want to reach me. And real estate, you've heard me say this before, very unsexy, very sort of slow going, very predictable. It's not a cutting edge technology business. It's not like a real needle mover in terms of like, you know, Elon Musk with battery powered cars and solar panels on roofs. I mean, that shit's great.
Yeah.
Real estate isn't really like that. So it's a way for me to bring my unsexy industry sort of to the forefront a little bit and participate with all the others that are doing what I do.
Yeah.
And introduce everybody to investing and real estate ownership and economics and entrepreneurship and mindset stuff. I mean, this is all stuff that I think is very relevant today, and I enjoy sharing it. And I feel like it's a little bit of my duty and obligation to give back a little bit. So for anybody out there, I think right now it's only like my mom and my brothers that watch us. But for anybody else who's not my mom and brothers that watch us, and you feel like you're getting any benefit from it, and maybe you learn something, I mean, it's a great thing, and it warms my heart to know that we can do that. I'm here I think it's fun. I love being with you, and I love making content that's about these topics and subject matter that are near and dear to our hearts.
Well, I think when it comes down to it, social media, people always talk about the media part, but the social is a big part of that. And so in this way...
It's engaging. People engage.
Well, you created a lot of relationships or affirmed relationships that you already had, and I think that is something that people don't necessarily do that with their social media, but you can build relationships.
Here's what I found about social media.
Yeah.
Most people on social media today, full of shit. They're not, let's just take like the business community of people.
Yeah.
They're not as successful as they purport to be. They're not as wealthy as they claim that they've achieved. And they haven't done as much as what they say, but they're on social media sort of pretending to be. That I don't love. So when you ask me how do you vet a sponsor for an investment, like don't go by social media. Ask for the track record. Ask for someone who's been around the block. I mean, I'm an older guy that's newer to social media. Perhaps seek out those types of people to invest with rather than a younger guy that's been on social media forever. There's only so much credibility that social media can lend. You really have to vet the person. Don't take advice from someone who hasn't achieved as much as you. Don't invest with someone that hasn't done as much as you. Don't invest with someone that hasn't had a really long, successful track record. Social media can mask some of that. So just be careful with social media because there's a lot of bullshitters out there. What's that meme? That
number one bullshit guy.
Yes. Yeah.
There's a lot of number one bullshit guys.
Yeah. No, hell yeah. That's true. All right. Well, thanks so much, Peter.
George, thanks.
See you over Q&A.
All right, buddy.
you ready for another beautiful Q&A?
Let's do it, George.
All right, sounds good.
Who's the question from today?
Today we had that tweet from Zane. This is from Dwayne Goodwin.
Zane and Dwayne. On the same day?
On the same day.
Dwayne Goodman.
Yeah.
Damn.
What are the chances?
I love our followers.
So he says, you say it's crucial to find a local market expert you can trust to invest with. How do I recognize a local market expert when I see one? How should I test their credentials?
Dwayne, listen, someone who's been in business for a year is a way different track record and credibility and expertise level than someone who's been in business for 20 years, right? I mean, it's pretty simple. Find the people that are the best in your market. You could Google them, you could ask around. Who's the best in what you want to be doing or investing in your market? Find the top 3 or 5 people, get to know them, search for the opportunities to work or invest with them. It's very simple to find someone who excels. You're looking for the fastest racehorse, the strongest fighter, the best team. That's what you want. You know how to find those things. They're out there. Don't be afraid to seek them out. That's who you want to be doing business with. That's who you want to be investing with. You got to be able to vet these people. How do you vet them? You got to go search them out. Be very, very careful. Ask a lot of questions. Everybody's going to come to you saying that they've got investment opportunities, deal opportunities, things that you should invest with them, and they're going to take a piece of the ups, or they're going to have a promote structure with you, or whatever it is. They're going to take fees. All of that stuff is going to be part of these offerings that you're going to review. You have to go with the best jockeys and the best horse. Listen, a good deal is a good deal, but a good deal with a bad jockey is a shitty deal. Don't invest.
Are there any questions that you feel like need to be answered before you say, okay?
How long have you been in business? What's your track record? What problems have you had? Anybody who's out shopping investments has a track record. Ask them for the track record. Make sure you see what they've done in all market conditions, in all market cycles. Look, right now, we're in a changing market cycle. The last market cycle started in 2009, and from 2009 to 2012, it was one way. Then from 2012 until now, it was another. And now it's going to be something else. You want someone who's been around the block. You want someone who's not their first rodeo. You want someone who's seen ups and downs, who's seen tough times, good times, easy lending environments, tough lending environments, low asset prices, high asset prices. You need someone who can forecast out into the future and see where the markets are going and where trends of consumer behaviors are going. If multifamily is where you want to invest, find the best person in multifamily that you can invest with. If you want to be in self-storage, find the best person in self-storage that you're able to invest with. A lot of people don't take outside investment, don't take partners, but a lot of people do. So there's ways to navigate these waters. Ask a lot of questions, demand a track record, see what problems they've had, see how long they've been in business, get recommendations from existing investors. You can do all these things. You have to do it. It's your obligation. If you're going to invest, there's a right way and a wrong way to invest. The right way is to make sure you're putting your money with an experienced professional who's got a track record.
Awesome. All right. Thanks so much, Peter. I'll see you next time.
Thanks, George. Thanks, Dwayne.
If you like what you just heard, you can subscribe to The Daily Cash Flow on iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts. And we'd love it if you left us a review. You can follow us on Twitter and Facebook at SiegelCap and on Instagram at Siegel.cap. As always, if you're an accredited investor, go to SiegelCapital.com and take our survey to see if you qualify to take part in one of our apartment building deals. That's SIEGEL Capital.com.